You're listening to the Smart Women in Business podcast, episode number 52.
Hello, you're listening to the Smart Women in Business podcast. My name is Jane Mackay, and on this show, we talk to smart women in business all over the world about starting, building, and creating the life and business of your dreams while having incredibly honest, in-depth, and rich conversations with amazing women in business who will inspire you to become smart women in business.
Hello and welcome to Smart Women in Business vlog and podcast. I'm your host, Jane Mackay from Jane Mackay Communications, marketing consultant and coach who works with people across the world to build the business of their dreams. Today, I'm speaking with my online friend, Claire Riley. Yay!
Hi!
Claire is a professional Virgo, neat freak, organiser extraordinaire, planning queen, opposite of me, a complete business nerd who's obsessed with simplifying, streamlining and systemising things so you can focus more on your zone of genius. Claire is a content marketing strategist, social media whisperer and process-driven problem solver who also loves red wine, her kids, mountain dawdling and spending way too much time watching reels. Welcome, Claire.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's good to finally connect. It's taken a little while to get here.
It has. We have many chats on Instagram, but not many live face-to-face, so it's very exciting to have you here.
Sure is.
I've known you for a while online, so tell me about your business journey and how you got to where you are right now.
Sure. I've actually just celebrated my 6th business anniversary in this business, which is pretty exciting. I started, a bit of a long story. I guess I started when my kids were babies. My ex-husband, or my husband at the time, was doing FIFO. So, I was kind of there by myself for quite a bit, and working in the corporate world just wasn't quite working, and it wasn't really what I wanted to be focusing on and all that sort of thing. So had some really great conversations with people who I trust and who also had their business, and who became amazing mentors, and kind of, got over that whole, you've got to have $50,000 in the bank and a 500-page business plan to start your business, and just kind of started and did the whole lean startup thing, and started making money really quickly, and was like, oh, this is fantastic. And what I get to choose my own hours as well, and who I work with, like what's that all about? So look, there was definitely some ups and downs over the last 6 years, but the last 2 years in particular have been really about, I guess, working out exactly what does work and how I want to work and who I want to work with and all of that sort of thing. So there's been a few different iterations, and there's been lots of mistakes, and there's been lots of fun. Been lots of tears. It's definitely been an up and down sort of thing, but it's a really beautiful place that I'm in at the moment, with a few different sort of things going on, and the variation between who I work with and all that sort of thing has just been, it's really awesome. It's really cool.
It's a fun old journey when you look back and go, wow, I've actually done this, built this thing from nothing. And I love lean startup.
Yeah.
It's such a good concept and a way to get going. You don't need to have everything mapped out. You just need someone to find you and someone to pay you.
Exactly. Yep. No, it's pretty awesome when you see how much you can start making money before you even spend it. And I'd set up businesses before. I was a remedial massage therapist and a baby massage trainer, and had like a CV and job application, job interview coaching business for a little while, and they were all fine, but I definitely pumped a lot of my money into those to get them kind of off the ground, and only to find that they weren't quite the right fit or what I was looking for anyway. So it was kind of a new concept to go, let's just throw some spaghetti at the wall and actually tap into my gifts and the things that I'm naturally good at, and all the mindset stuff that comes with asking for money for stuff that's really easy to you, but that's a whole other conversation.
We have talked a lot about that on this podcast.
Oh, good.
Money mindset is and mindset itself is one of the biggest barriers, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
In business and at every stage of business, because I don't generally work with startups anymore. I used to a lot, and now it's still imposter syndrome and all of that, but we'll come to that. So tell me about your evolution. What were the signs it was time to change? Because often our businesses don't look anything like they were 6 years ago or 12 years ago in my case.
Yep. So I guess one of the big things that there's probably three things. One of them is your products, one of them is the income, and the other one is your time. So I guess if I've sort of separated into like the three things that have always motivated me to make some changes, or the next iteration or the next evolution of my business has been one of those three things. So probably the first one was price. When I first started, I did this special for much to my coach's chagrin. Absolutely, like, don't tell her that I'm putting this offer out there. I did $25 for an hour, which was, a tenth of what my hourly rate is now. But I'm such a fan of it, to be honest. And I tell anyone, if that's what helps you put yourself out there for the first time, go nuts. Like, it was such a kind of a baptism of fire. Like, I got 8 people straight off the bat. So I had 8 new clients within the first week, of like the first day that I put it out there, and I worked with them all in the first couple of weeks. It took the pressure off me because I didn't feel like I had to provide $250 worth of value. All I had to do was like make them feel like they got their $25 worth. And I feel like, that's not a big ask sort of thing. But it also gave me 8 times to practice my craft, to practice the process, to practice the delivery, and to just kind of get over myself and that sort of thing. So in that sense, it was really good. But obviously that's not sustainable. Like, charge $25 an hour, you're going to end up working a lot of hours to pay the bills, right?
Yeah, you're going to cap out pretty soon. Yeah,
exactly. So that was the first kind of thing, like put that up to, I think, 45, and then very quickly up to 75, and then up to 150, and then, so on and so forth, and that sort of thing. So that was kind of one of those big things, I think, that forces the evolution of, how you're doing things, but also what you're charging $25 for may be slightly different to what you're charging $250 for. So it also forces you to get really niche or really specific on what the outcomes are, or really clear on the value proposition of what you're actually selling and that sort of thing. So I think they're kind of, it's a bit of a which comes first, the chicken or the egg sort of thing. The second thing was around, I remember doing a session with a customer journey specialist on a few other things, including the customer journey. But she said about halfway through our session, Claire, what do you want to be doing in your business? Like, what are the 3 things that you want to be spending most of your time doing? And I, thought for a second, and whatever the 3 things were, wrote them on sticky notes and put them up on the wall. And then she said, and what are the 3 things that are currently taking the most of your time or attention or energy or whatever? And there was no match, right? The things that I was spending most time on were the things that I hated, or that felt really, really hard, or really unfun sort of thing. But and so just seeing that, and now the top thing that I ask all of my clients, like, what are the 3 things that you want to spend most of your time doing? Adjust accordingly, right? And that was a really big eye opener for me, just to go, like, I'm the boss, I make the rules, and I'm still doing work that I hate. Like, that totally defeats the purpose. Like, it's not a job anymore. I can outsource, or I can automate it, or I can stop doing it altogether, or whatever the answer is, So that was a really big thing around the process. But that also then kind of informs your product. So at another point in the evolution, there was definitely a time I did like a stock take, all of my freebies, all of my paid offers, all of my acuity appointment types that people could book with me. And there were literally like probably over 50 things. What am I doing? This is so confusing. It's confusing to me.
I'm very confused. Yeah.
It's very confusing to me. It must be so confusing to other people. So actually getting clear on what were the things that I liked to deliver and what were the profitable things. So all of those sort of things, sometimes you take a hit on one because you just love doing it so much. And sometimes, you hand the other things up because that's where, the money makers are and that sort of thing. But finding a nice happy balance and just having a couple of those kind of baskets made a big difference. So I reckon it's probably 3 or 4 years ago that I made the decision. There were 3 ways. It was going to be VIP, retreats, and Batshit Crazy, which is my online membership.
Which is the best name for a product ever.
Thank you. I should slow it down just in case anyone hasn't heard of it. It's Batshit Crazy. I'm not swearing, I promise.
Batching content.
All about batching content, yes. But as soon as I made that decision and cleared out so much of the other noise and the junk and that sort of thing, a lot of those things then became like bonuses and add-ons and downloads and templates, but I wasn't charging for them anymore because they weren't as valuable as those 3 things. But everything got a lot easier from there because the content that surrounded those 3 things were very specific. The launch period that surrounded those 3 things were very specific. All of those sort of things just became so much easier. And also it made, I guess, my audience and my potential clients be like, oh, she's the one who does the A, B, and C.
Yeah.
There's 3 ways. There's not like, oh my gosh, there's a menu here the size of something that Gordon Ramsay would be freaking out over. It's just 3 things, and often it's the same people who come from one and then go into the other, or, vice versa and that sort of thing. So I guess they've kind of been some of the milestones that have preempted those evolutionary kind of next steps or iterations of the business. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And mentally, you've got to be there. Mindset, you've got to be there, because you can't just create products and set pricing if you're not ready for it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And like I always say, you trust the process, but you can't just trust anyone who says trust the process. You've got to go through the process and stuff a heap of stuff up first. You've got to break some things. You've got to make a heap of mistakes. You've got to, have those moments where you're like, what the hell just happened? What have I done?
What am I doing?
Yeah. And then you see, okay, I'm in this part of the process, because then 5 minutes later, you're back up here in the process, and then you go back down in the process, and then you're back up in the process. And it's not until you've done that a few times, you're like, that's what everyone means by trusting the process. But you can't trust it until you've done the process a bit. So I'm like, trust the process. It's just a nice hashtag, but just do the process and you'll figure it out yourself.
Just keep making progress, and that is the actual process.
Exactly.
And then you come out the other end and go,
that's what just happened.
Right. Thanks. Yeah, cool.
yeah, exactly. There was courses that I was doing that I did, even 4 or 5 times over, and even by the 5th time I was doing the same content that I'd done 4 times, I was like, it makes so much sense now, or it makes sense, or I didn't even hear it the other 4 times because it wasn't what I needed to hear at that point, or it wasn't relevant, or it didn't make sense, or I didn't have the experience to go, I can apply that to my business or whatever, that sort of thing. So I think it is definitely a progress thing, and it's almost sort of cherry picking, the low hanging fruit of what works for you at the moment, or what you need at the moment, or all of that sort of thing, and sort of stitching it together. I always talk about, businesses, especially with startup, and even, through the journey, even my business, I think it's still a bit of a Frankenstein business, and I'm a total tight ass. I hate paying for things. So I do often have like a little bit of that free tool and a little bit of that over there, and I stitch it together and I make it work somehow. And, and I kind of like that. Like it didn't have to be all the bells and whistles and everything in a row before I was like, hey, I've got a business. I'm like, no, let's just start with the Facebook page.
Yeah,
and see what happens,
MailChimp and
exactly.
bootstrap it like it's
totally
1999.
Yeah, I'm totally up for it.
Yeah, me too. And then you have a little dabble in products, and then you go, okay, that one's the one. One's the one.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to play with them. And as you say, you got to break stuff. So how do you manage your life as an entrepreneur? Because I know you have little ones.
Yes.
And we were talking about the chaos earlier.
Yes, we were talking about the chaos. I guess there's a lot of different things. And I think probably the biggest thing that I've learned is that there's no one size fits all. And what works for me today or this week or this month or this year isn't going to work for me tomorrow or next week, and so on and so forth, and giving myself the permission to be less rigid, still have, some structure and that sort of thing. Because we all know I'm a typical Virgo and I do love my structure, but I've got safety nets, right? And those are the safety nets that allow me to be more flexible and allow me to play and allow me to be more responsive. And, with best laid plans of mice and men, and then your kid gets sick and it all goes out the window, or you forget that there was some event on at school and all your plans go out the window and that sort of thing. And I think part of it is being really selective about your messaging and who you work with as well. Like I remember, especially back when I was still quite new, and there was a couple of times this happened, but one specific example where I'd spoken to a woman, she was super keen to do some work with me. And then she was like, yep, send me the invoice, send the invoice. And she'd message to say, I'm really sorry. I can't commit. I was like, cool, no worries. Let me know when you are. And then she kept coming back like 2 or 3 times. And eventually she was like, I'm actually just really worried, because she had a little baby. She's like, he never sleeps. He's, wakes up, and I'm just worried that it's going to be really disruptive to you. And I was like, oh mate, like seriously, I'll have to cancel just as often as you will. My kids were only probably 2 and 3 then as well. I'm like, listen, like I choose to work with mumpreneurs, especially because we get it. Like I'm really selective with that. And if there was someone, I have to cancel things sometimes, as you've seen. I think we've had to reschedule this like 3 times.
I think it was your kid and then my kid.
Right. But that's cool. And there's no beef. And if there's beef, then we just don't carry on.
We're not a match.
We're not a match.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really big part of how I've been able to build the lifestyle around that without the guilt. And it certainly didn't happen overnight. And I was, in my corporate career, I was absolutely, would have been saying, I famously said all the time, like, I never get sick. And if I do get sick, you won't know about it until I'm literally dead in the office and you have to send me home. And then I'll end up in hospital for a week because I've literally let myself get it. But I took loads of pride in that. I thought like, that's what a good little employee ant did, you know. So that was kind of my my MO sort of thing. And now it's like, I was saying to someone, last year I had a period for about 6 months where I was working such big hours, and they're like, well, like, how many hours were you doing? I was like, oh, maybe like 25 or 30. And then I just felt like, oh my gosh, did I just hear myself say I just worked so many hours, and so many hours was 25 or 30 hours a week for maybe 4 or 5 months? It is a lot of hours. And like, what a blessing that I think that 25 to 30 hours is a blessing. I used to do 60 and 80-hour weeks, like with my eyes closed, no issue, and take pride in that. And like, that was a good thing, So in terms of how I balance things, I guess, that's the main thing, is to be quite selective with, who I work with, and the whole ethos around my brand and my messaging and how I teach, and the sort of people that I want to work with are the same. Like, we have other priorities other than our business. Our business is a massive priority, of course, and we all need to pay bills. But also, the whole reason that most of us started businesses is so that we could have flexibility, more time with our kids, time with our family, time to do hobbies, time to do like whatever it is that we do, not so that we could be a slave to it and feel bad every time we had to make a change or be flexible or, look after our kids, all that sort of thing. Yeah. So I think that's, one of the big things. And I mean, in terms of the practicalities of how I make all of that work, keep going back to the hashtag textbook Virgo sort of thing, but my calendar is kind of my oracle. Like, I do, every time when my computer opens up, the first thing that comes up is my Google Calendar. It's on my phone. Everything kind of runs in there. So the kid stuff, it's color coded. No huge surprises there.
Yeah.
The kid stuff's in there. The recurring meetings are in there. My self-care stuff, like when I go to the gym or if I'm going for a walk, or all of those things are all in there. And one thing I often teach all of this sort of thing with the market and with the master scheduling and that sort of thing is, when you've got a calendar or a planning system that works, that really helps you make decisions in your business as well, right? Because you go, if I want to be going for a walk 5 days a week, and if I want to be going to gym twice a week, and if I want to be having coffee with a friend once a week, and if I want to be going on a retreat once every 6 months, and if I want to be doing a mosaic table class once a week, whatever it is, it's all in the calendar. And I need to talk to my business mentor once a week, and I'm doing this course and we have live calls this many times. And then you start to see like your windows of actual time for delivery and for income generating things really shrinking. It helps you to get pretty damn clear on A, what you need to be offering, and B, how much you need to be charging, right? So when you go, oh, I want to make $10,000 a month, and then you look at your calendar and you're like, but I've only got 5 hours a week. Right, how am I going to do this sort of thing? Rather than going, I'm going to make $10,000 a month, and then get to the end of the month and go, I haven't even started that thing. I didn't even make any money. What happened there? It's often because we haven't actually worked out the time for money exchange and ratio, or the leverage products and all of that sort of thing. So I sort of think having your calendar and having your priorities in your calendar and that sort of thing really actually helps you make those decisions. And when you look at that and you're like, well, it makes it a no-brainer, I've got to put my brakes up now. Or it makes it a no-brainer that I need a leveraged product, so it's not just one-on-one or something like that.
And it's interesting. My calendar is my brain, because it saves me remembering anything.
Totally, yeah.
And if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist.
Doesn't get done. Same. No. I'm exactly the same. Yeah.
Because it's not real unless it's in the calendar. But you touched on the guilt there, and it's often a balance for us who are managing our kids and managing the clients. The guilt is a really difficult thing to get over.
Yeah.
But when you're working with the right type of clients, and I mean, my kids have grown up in this, they have no option, but they're used to it. That's a hard thing to let go of, especially if you've come from corporate, you're used to that really high level of delivery. Like, I hate the feeling of letting people down.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's one of the big challenges, I reckon.
It is a big challenge. And I think it sort of comes back to that being flexible. Sometimes your children are, I mean, always your children are a priority, but sometimes you're happy to let them watch the iPad for a couple of hours while you're on calls or doing work. And sometimes you're like, no, my kids are they need my time and attention and that sort of thing. And there's no point beating yourself up either way, sort of thing. But yeah, the guilt thing is always a bit of an issue. It's always something to work through. I guess one thing that I think, especially working mostly with women, and you've probably experienced this as well, is that when one of us sort of says, look, I'm not feeling guilty about this anymore, I'm doing this unapologetically, it kind of holds the door open for other people to go like, yeah, that's appealing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to feel guilty about this shit anyway. And the more that we can, you know, be open about it and honest about it and not have that shame, even if you're saying like, this sucks and I'm really sorry and I'm really embarrassed, but at the end of the day, this is my priority, or my kid's sick, like you've got to surrender control over that sort of thing. And yeah, it really does kind of make it easier for the people around you to do it. And the more that you see that, you know, you can kind of be a good influence or a leader in that space, so you're like, oh, well, that kind of worked, maybe I'll do it again. You know?
It's that whole thing of we're people first.
Yes, exactly. Human to human. And
humans,
you know, that's why we're doing it. That's why we're doing it differently. And you know, our whole marketing and, you know, that whole magnetic thing is very, very different to the push marketing that, you know, from back in the day / still rife everywhere else.
It's still a bit, it's
around.
It's around. I have many conversations about that. So what does a great day in the office look like to you, apart from calendar opening as soon as you turn on your paper?
Yes, good one. Well, my day generally doesn't start until about 9. So before that, it's all kids stuff. And on the days that I don't have the kids, it's about going for a walk or gym or something like that. So bit of both of those sorts of things. I generally don't do like, my acuity is only open between 10 and 2. Because I like to, I realized about myself a few years ago when I was rushing around in the morning. It's not so much these days. I've moved to the sunny coast. My lifestyle is pretty relaxed and pretty chilled, and it takes me 5 minutes to walk the kids to and from school. Whereas before it used to take me an hour and 40 kilometers to get both the kids dropped off and back home. And by that stage, we'd been awake for 3 hours. Everything was a bit frantic. I'd already spent an hour in the car. It was, you know, all that sort of thing. These days, it's not so much, but I do know about myself that if I have to go through that and then sit down and try and switch on, I'm not at my best. And I love and I really relish those, you know, rituals about making a nice cup of coffee and sitting down and organizing my day and checking my calendar and making sure that I'm at like what I call ground zero for my inbox, my messages, that sort of thing. So that everything's kind of taken care of. And there's a few other, you know, morning ritual sort of things that I do. I usually pull a card, do a bit of journaling or captain's orders and that sort of thing. Sometimes do a meditation. And then I hit the ground running at 10 o'clock. And I'm so happy to go do whatever I need to do for, you know, the next 4.5 hours, whatever. So there's always that beautiful kind of space, whether these days I might go to the beach or I might just come home, I might do the coffee, I might sit down and write my to-do list for the day or whatever. So there's always that element of that kind of morning ritual that just makes such a massive difference mindset wise, and then productivity wise for the rest of the day. So that's kind of not negotiable for me. Occasionally I'll take an earlier meeting, but it's got to be like the last resort kind of thing.
And sacred time.
And it just makes such a difference. And there's, you know, been times where I'm like, I'm feeling really overwhelmed or burnt out or unproductive or shitty or whatever. What's going on? And when I think about it, it's because I've dropped one of my routines and I've dropped my morning routine or my end of day routine. Usually it's the morning that goes because I'm tired or I'm cranky or I have to go and get groceries instead of coming home and doing my things, whatever it was. Like, that's fallen. Okay, get back into that. And it just helps. And sometimes the ritual needs to change. Sometimes I don't pull a card or don't do journaling for a couple of months because I don't feel like it. And that's cool. I'm not like, it's on my ritual to-do list, so I have to do it. Like
otherwise I'm not showing up as a spiritual entrepreneur.
Exactly. It's not about that, you know. And so totally go through phases where I look at that journal, I'm like, I hate you so much. I'm not doing pages this morning. I'm not writing anything this morning. I just want to sit and drink my coffee outside and watch the sun or the rain as it is at the moment or whatever it is. And that's fine. But having that space between the morning stuff and the getting started with work stuff is really, really important to me. So I definitely hold on to that.
It brings me great peace, that period of time in my day where I go, all right, meditate, reset, then go into the day. And I'm like you, I find if I've dropped that, the whole rest of my life is so much more stressful.
Yeah. Weird. It is weird and also completely understandable. So.
And also completely logical, but
but weird, very, very weird. So then I guess I've got what I sort of picture like four or so hours of super productive time. I typically have, you know, I've got batch of crazy calls once a week, which is for 2 hours. I've got other calls that I run and then other calls that I'm, you know, in professional development, mastermind courses and that sort of thing. And then client one-on-one work. And then if there's time where I don't have anything plugged into my calendar, I usually have something plugged into my calendar. So on the spare time, it's like client work or CEO time or admin time or reporting time, like once a month. I have my barefoot date night, which ends up being my barefoot date night for my personal finances, as well as my profit first stuff and all of my reporting and finances stuff and all of that sort of thing. So so I guess all of that kind of gets done. I go and pick up the kids usually around 2:30, and then it's usually the end of my day. A couple of times a week they're not here of an afternoon, so I occasionally work a little bit later, but I'm pretty into my Pomodoro work sessions, the 25 minutes with 5 minutes and that sort of thing. So, by the time you've done a couple of sets of those, you've been so super productive that I feel like I can take the afternoon off. We have this amazing lifestyle. We go to the beach, or we do whatever.
I want to go to the sunny coast. I keep talking about it. I love it.
So great. It's so beautiful. I love it so much.
Where were you before?
Just Brisbane, not far.
Not far. So not the craziness of Sydney. Where I can't even drive in Sydney. It scares me.
Crazy.
I'm such a country mouse now. I moved from Melbourne, and I drove into Melbourne last week, and I'm like, oh my God, the traffic.
Wow. Yeah. But, overwhelming.
Overwhelming, yes, and the energy. Anyway, what tools do you use? We talked about bootstrapping earlier, and you obviously use Acuity, and everyone uses Zoom because that's how we live.
Yeah. Zoom, Acuity, Asana is like between Asana and my calendar. I mean, if they both went away tomorrow, I would be rocking in the corner dribbling, and I'd be a total mess. Absolutely. So Asana is kind of my second little oracle. I keep all of my to-do lists, my priorities, but also my SOPs and processes and planning things, content, all of that sort of thing stays in their databases, and it's how I manage my team and all of that sort of thing. So Asana is absolutely just magic to me. I really love it. Happiness. So I use Acuity for all my online bookings, as well as all the confirmations and reminder emails and that sort of thing. I switched to Active Campaign from MailChimp probably 4 years ago, and
me too.
Kind of like an Active Campaign cult leader these days, because I just adore it so much. Yeah,
I love it.
Just love
automations.
The automations, the drag, it's just so easy and beautiful. And if you haven't listened to the Active Campaign podcast, also highly recommend. I don't listen to fun podcasts. I listen to ones about email marketing tools, but it's very,
Claire
very
doesn't
good.
have spare time.
I know. I promise I'm actually really interesting and fun, but I just like listening to really dorky things.
Go and lie on the beach and listen to Active Campaign.
Yes. Yeah, I know. What a dork. Anyway, so I love Active Campaign. I use Squarespace. I've used Squarespace for my last 3 businesses, and I've been with them, probably, 9-10 years cumulatively, and I just really love their functionality and how everything looks so pretty, and it works with Acuity. In fact, it owns Acuity these days.
It does.
What else do I use? Messenger I use quite a bit. I use Slack with some of my clients. Evernote for big chunky things. Google Drive is probably my go-to for organizing stuff, with that sort of thing these days. I'm just looking at my toolbar.
Quick links.
Yes. Loom is another one. Most of these are all free, by the way, but Loom I have upgraded to because I use it so much and I needed some extra storage, but it's like, I don't know, $7 a month or something. So now if I'm handing something over to my team, I very rarely send an email with instructions. I just do a video of the instructions, and then they turn it into a process or whatever, and that sort of thing. It just is just so brilliant. They're probably the main ones, I think. They're the main things that pop into my head. iNotes I use a lot on the go on my phone. For some reason, I'm not a huge fan of Asana and Evernote on my phone, so I kind of put quick things into my iNotes and then I transfer them later if need be. But
yeah, I'm a big fan of emailing myself.
Are you? Yeah.
Because I know if it's in my inbox and it's unread,
you have to deal with it.
Addressed.
Yeah. Good one.
It will get done.
I like it.
Oh, the way we live these days.
I do talk to Siri quite a lot, and Siri takes lots of notes for me and sends me lots of reminders, and I've got alarms going off every 5 seconds, and
I'm such a dork too. One of the things that affects every entrepreneur I know is imposter syndrome. So it can show up in many different ways, but what are your methods to overcome it, and how do you respond to the bad days of of business, because we don't see them on Instagram?
Yeah, it's so true. It's a really good question, actually. I think just to address that specific point is to say that absolutely everyone, no matter how people are showing up, everyone feels it, probably on a fairly regular basis, not just a once off. It's not just something that comes up, every 6 months that you start to freak out or something. I think one of the things, and this sounds really basic, but something that always makes a big difference. But I went through this period probably again 4 or 5 years ago where there was this period for maybe 6 months where I'd have an idea, almost bring it to life, then someone else would bring it out. And I'm like, what just happened? Like, I can't bring this out if like people think I'm copying someone. Right, back to the drawing board, come up with another idea, get it 90% done, someone would come out with that. I'm like, what the hell is going on? This happened like 4 or 5 times in a row. And then for the last time it happened, I went into total meltdown. I'm like, what is going on here? I don't know if you've read Big Magic, but now that I've read Big Magic, I'm like, that's probably something to do with it, because I wasn't, onto it or whatever. But one thing that I felt like that was a really good thing that happened out of that was that I got to the point where I was passionate about one thing that I was like, no, you know what? I still really want to bring this out. So it made me kind of innovate a little bit more. And I went back and I was like, maybe there's something I've missed. Maybe there's something that I haven't quite made mine enough, or maybe there was something that I was missing. And so it made the product better than it would have been, because I wanted to differentiate it a little bit, so it didn't look like it was exactly the same as this other person's. But it also gave me that kind of marker, like, this is really important. This isn't just someone else has done it, I won't do it anyway. So, all of that sort of thing. And moving on from that sort of thing. So actually looking at it with curiosity rather than frustration, which is much easier said than done, obviously. I've definitely jumped to frustration quite quickly.
I feel frustrated a lot of the time.
Yes, that's exactly right. Exactly. But it was a really interesting, activity. And then once I brought it out, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. This really worked, and that sort of thing. And I think that's the biggest thing. The other thing is, when I was then from a consumer point of view looking at some different products and seeing like there's all these people who I could work with for this particular need, whatever it was, but what was it that was drawing me to one or the other? Like, they all could have done the job, they all were competent, they probably had similar pricing, all of that sort of thing. And realizing that for me it was about the connection, that magnetism that we talked about briefly before, and then reflecting that back to myself. Like, it's actually not that I'm better or more expert or cheaper or whatever it is than all these other people. It's actually about that being magnetic, right? And it's not a competition, right? I mean, I guess it kind of is in some ways, but at the end of the day, if
we don't see it as
work with someone else,
yeah,
exactly, then that's cool.
Yeah.
And when you can get into that magnetism, it just makes so much more sense to me these days. I actually understood magnetism really well when I met someone who I'd been really drawn to online. We'd communicated online quite a lot, and then we met in person, and I felt this physical like repulsion, this physical like, oh, I've got to get away from you. And I was so confused by it, because in my head and in all of our other interactions, I'd been so like, I don't even know if I was drawn to her, but I also had this, in the recovering perfectionist sort of thing, I also have this people pleasing. And the more that I think someone doesn't really like me, the more I like chase after them, be like, you sure? But I'm really nice. Like, you should like me because of X, Y, Z, And you kind of go over the top to try and make people like you, especially when they might not like you, rather than just hanging out with people who think you're amazing.
Yeah.
Hell, we don't do that anymore though. Like, we're over that now. We're good.
We're done.
We're done. We're not doing that anymore. But it was a real thing, right? And so actually realizing that some people are just going to be repellent to you and some people are going to be magnetic to you, and vice versa, and just being okay with that and being like, oh, we're just repellent to each other. Cool. No harm, no foul. There's no malice. There's no nastiness. There's no...
It's not personal.
There's no drama.
Our vibes just aren't gelling.
Just not our people. Let's move on and go and hang with some people who are our people, who are magnetized to us, who we are magnetized to, and that sort of thing. So I think that was a really big shift in my mindset that probably helped me get over that imposter syndrome sort of thing. When I say get over it, that time, like, it's still, as I said, keeps popping up, and it pops up all the time for different reasons. And, whether it's someone else has already done this or someone else does it better or all of that sort of thing, it always pops up for us. But at the end of the day, we are all the most unique combination of our experience, our qualifications, our lifestyle, our beliefs, our values, like all of these things. We're the perfect melting pot. And that's what differentiates us from anyone. So you can't actually compare. It's comparing apples and oranges, you know?
Yeah. I love it.
There we go. Went around in circles a bit there, but
we got to the point. I understand what you're talking about, because it's very much, especially if you're doing quotes, they're not getting accepted, whatever. I actually don't even remember the quotes that I send that don't get accepted anymore. Like back in the old days, we're like, why didn't they accept it? I'm like, right, move on. Yeah. Because it's not about necessarily what you do, how you do it. It's about how you show up, who you are, how you gel as, that energetic attraction, that magnetism, and that working relationship you have with people. Because ultimately being in business is about relationships.
Yeah.
And you got to be mates with someone. Otherwise it's not fun.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So obviously I know you online, and that's how I know you. Like, I've never met you in person, but how do you maintain your sense of community while being a entrepreneur in the wild?
Community online, do you mean, or
just in life? Everywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's sort of different circles, I suppose, that we all move in, whether it's the school parents or the neighborhood, the physical thing. All of my best friends now, live interstate or at least a long way away, that sort of thing. I think technology and messages and just staying in touch makes a really big difference with that and that sort of thing. But I think it comes back to being really clear on what you stand for and sort of putting that out there. I did this a couple of 10-day challenges and that sort of thing around putting your message out and doing your selfies and all of that sort of thing. And again, it all comes back to that magnetism thing, I think, being okay with letting the people go who, aren't your people and calling in the people who are. I think the biggest thing that I've learned, especially in the last probably 3 years, gone through a lot of personal change in my personal life and that sort of thing. But the biggest difference, I think, has just been about becoming and getting okay with being vulnerable and, testing your toe in the water. And I was, as I said, very, took a lot of pride in the fact that I never took time off work and that I was very strong. I've always been very independent. I was, brought up pretty much as an only child by a single mum. And I'm, kind of had this whole persona of like, no, I've got this. I'm a bit of an island, super independent, until I realized, how much of a trauma response that was and all of that sort of thing. So I've done the work and had the sessions and, that's an ongoing kind of process. But actually learning to be vulnerable and learning to get things wrong and learning to go, oh, stuff that up, that sucks, rather than being this whole perfectionist persona, which is, its own sort of kettle of fish, really makes a massive difference. So when I started talking about the Recovering Perfectionist, which is my Facebook group, my podcast, there's a book that's coming out shortly. When I started doing the Recovering Perfectionist stuff, it was terrifying because I was so attached to and so used to being the perfectionist and everyone being like, wow, she does such a good job at this. And it was such a part of my persona sort of thing that when I finally was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm exhausted. It's boring. And motherhood was the catalyst for that for me. It was just like this reality check of like, get your shit together. You do not have to do these things perfectly. You can ask for help and you can accept help when people say yes. And
you can fail.
When people offer, fine. And you can what?
Fail.
You fail and the whole world isn't going to explode. And, when I first put out the Recovering Perfectionist, the podcast, I put it out there and it was kind of almost, there was a couple of things that I knew weren't quite ready, but I'm like, if I miss the promo day today, I have to wait for another week and it's like a day away sort of thing. So I put it out there and one of my clients first came back and said, Claire, I'm so proud of you. You put this out there with all these spelling mistakes or something like that. And I slammed my laptop shut, burst into tears and completely lost the plot for a little while. And then I'm like, hang on a minute. This was an exercise in not doing things perfectly. Like this is literally the universe going, are you sure? You're sure about that? I'm like, yep, 100%.
Are you going to go in and change it immediately?
No. And so all I did was say, thanks. And moved on. I didn't even look for the typos. I'm like, I can't even. I'm not going to, whatever. But I always describe that moment.
I feel seen. I
always describe that moment and what happened for the period straight afterwards as when everyone's sitting around at Christmas lunch and everyone's had an absolute gutful of food. We're all still trying to be polite. Everyone wants to just go for a nap, but everyone's still, chit-chatting and that sort of thing. And someone finally undoes their button. And as soon as you notice someone does it, everyone does it. That's what it felt like when I was like, okay, this is uncomfortable and I know this is kind of a little bit inappropriate, but I'm going to do it anyway. And everyone else just went, oh, thank God we don't have to do it. We don't have to be perfect either. And just it was the same as what I said before. And noticing the beautiful effect that had on everyone else was like, I could kind of trick myself into like, I'm just doing this so that it's okay for them to do it. Being the people pleaser. I'm not doing this for myself. I'm just doing this for them. But it tricked me into doing the same sort of thing. So same with asking for and accepting help. When someone says, hey, Jane, can you give me a hand with something? Or I really need your help. Or they call and say, can we have a chat? Or like, I just need to talk something. You're like, oh, they picked me. They could have picked anyone and they asked me for help. You feel super chuffed, right? And when you can help someone, you get that beautiful bucket filling for one. We read the bucket filling book from Bedtime Story last night. That's why it's in my head. It's that beautiful feeling. And so I was again sort of tricked myself into thinking like, I'm just going to let people help me because it makes them feel good, not because I need the help, because it makes them feel good. And then after so many times I said yes or accepted help or whatever, even when I was like, I don't really need it, but I'll do it for them because it makes them feel good. I'm like, wow, this makes everyone's life better. When you accept help, when you ask for help or someone offers it and you say, yes, please, like everything just kind of fits into place. So I think that's kind of probably the ethos of the community that I've, tried to foster and try to build, whether it's my community or the ones that I'm sort of in, is being a bit vulnerable, whether it's asking for help or saying stuff that usually feels a bit uncomfortable or asking for, stuff, whatever. Like when I separated from my ex several years ago, I sent a message probably within a few days to a group of women who were kind of my peers, but also, quite spiritual mentor-wise for me. Sent them a message, let them know. And I was like, I don't know what I need. I don't know that I need anything. I just need to tell someone. This feels really gross. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, thanks, bye.
Okay, thanks, bye. Probably completely awkward. And they all just came back with like, cool, we're here for you when you need, we're here, like whatever. There was no judgment. There was no questions. There was no bullshit, anything like that. And just sending that message and knowing that there were people there who were just going to hold that space for me or be there if I then had a meltdown and was like, on the phone. I didn't have to explain it sort of thing. So just knowing that I could say those things to people was like, oh, all right, and no one died and everything's fine and cool. It was just and then they started doing that to the others, and it was just, I don't know, there's something around that vulnerability, I think, especially as women, that we are really good with our feelings and all that sort of thing, but we are also sometimes feel like we're a burden or we're asking too much, or we know that everyone else got loads on their plate as well, so you're kind of reluctant to ask and that sort of thing, business wise and personal. But that's what makes that whole community kind of tick. So yeah, it's amazing how, so I've got a couple, like they're actually my online mothers group, because I'm so remote. My online mothers groups have become really close community, and if anyone in there, so collectively there's probably 80 people in both of them, if anyone in there is having a crisis, everyone's just like, right, down tools, someone needs help. How fantastic is it?
Just let us know, what do you need? And and we've been through so much together, and that incredible community and that vulnerability and having that safe space where you can go, I think has replaced that. We probably had it in villages, but I found that it's not, and finding what makes a safe space different is you don't get judged. Exactly. You don't get gossiped about. You don't, which is what does happen in small towns. I'm very anti-gossip. I don't participate in it, just saying that. But I love that beautiful safe space where you're actually not going to be judged. And if someone's judging me, you ain't my people.
That's their shit, exactly.
Yeah, that's all on
what you think
babe.
of me is none of my business. Is one of my faves. Yep. Yeah.
Just because you say something doesn't make it true is what I always say to my kids. So what is your why? What keeps you motivated in this wonderful journey of entrepreneurship, as crazy as it is?
I guess there's a few things. Number one, it's really important to me that my kids see that it's not just a linear journey. You don't have to go to school, university, get a job, get married, have babies and die. Like, I just think there's so much more about life and that sort of thing. And so for me, it's kind of been almost a bit reverse engineered. Like, I wanted to do this for the kids, and I'm doing this to show the kids. And every time the kids are like, I want to be a such and such when I grow up, I'm like, you could, or you could start your own business and blah blah blah, and not work for the man, and make your own money and make your own out, blah blah blah. Like, I go on that sort of tangent. But in doing so, I've also had to force myself into actually living those truths, and not just saying the words, and not just being like, you can do anything you want to do. I'm like, you know what, I want to do this thing, so I'm going to go and do it. And I want you to see me doing it. I want you to see me having good boundaries, and I want you to see me having fun. I want you to see me being able to pick, when I work and when we go away on holidays and all of that sort of thing. Like, that's become really important to me. So teaching them a different way than what we were probably brought up with. Like, it's so linear. You have to do this, then this, then this, and if you miss a step, well, guess you're going down Centrelink. Like, there was
you're
this
off the island, mate.
Totally, right? And it's such a load of rubbish. And I mean, it has been a journey, and there's definitely been times where income's been really crap, and then there's definitely been times when the income's been amazing. And I think that's kind of part of the journey, as well as having to, plan and respond and, make changes and reflect and review and all of that sort of thing. So I think that's been a really big part of it. For me, especially in the last couple of years since moving up here and being a single mum, the lifestyle has always been the reason, but now that I'm living the lifestyle, I'm like, I'm not giving up this lifestyle. Like, I'm
not compromising my boundaries.
I'm not compromising my boundaries. Up until probably 2 years ago, I probably went on Seek about every 6 months. I was like, screw this, I'm going to go get a job. This is too hard. It's too whatever the problem was that day. And then I'd spend half an hour on Seek and be like,
oh, this is so
never mind.
Forget about it. And then I remember
I'll make it work.
School holidays, and I go, I can't make that work.
Totally. School holidays, like the lifestyle thing, but also the money thing. And you're like, they want me to do what? For how much? Are you serious? No,
40 hours a week?
Yeah, for 40 hours a week. And do I have to ask someone if I need time off? Because that's not going to happen. Like, I just...
does not play nicely with others.
Exactly. So the lifestyle thing, now that I've, I was reading through some captain's orders and some journaling stuff from years ago, and everything that I wanted, I've got. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, what's next? If that's sort of the thing, like, I'm only working 15 to 20 hours a week, I'm super present for the kids, I'm about to buy a house, I'm, all of the things that I want to do. I want to go to the beach every day. I want to go for a walk every day. I want to have an hour in the morning to do whatever the hell I want to do, that sort of thing. Like, imagine not being able to do that anymore. And that is really motivating to me, because I just love my life so much, now that we're sort of in this position, that's a really, really big motivator for me. And I guess part of that is also money. This year is, for me, is about sustainability. Last year was about growth. And I think, there's always a bit of a flow with that sort of thand but definitely, in order to support that and, things that I want to do in the future with investing and travel and all of that sort of thing, is definitely, I've always been motivated by money to some extent, although more so these days I understand that it's not really the money, it's the lifestyle that I perceive the money can get me.
It's what money gives you.
Exactly. So yeah, so I think those are kind of the three big things, or the two big things really, that make it work. But there's also days where I do just go, you know what, I hate everything right now, and I'm not going to do anything, and I'm going to sit on the couch and watch Netflix and eat chocolate, and I'm not going to apologize for that, and that's completely okay, because tomorrow will be fine again.
I'll be better.
So it's not all like, yay, I'm so motivated, sunshine and lollipops. That's not how it works, right? It's not all Instagram.
It's not all the prettiness you see on Instagram. It's funny, I got to a point where I go, you know what, if I want a nap, I'm just going to have a nap.
Yeah.
And ever since I said that, though, no naps. It's like my inner rebel goes,
I live in a townhouse complex, and I even find if it's the middle of the day and I want to sit down and watch telly, I shut my blinds, because I you know, like, what if they think like, what does she just like lay down on the couch all day?
Telly on during the day?
Exactly. Isn't she supposed to be working? And part of me is like, yeah, yep, and it's working. And part of me is still like, I can't let anyone see that I'm not at my computer 5 hours a day.
That's so funny. Whereas I close the blinds in case delivery people turn up and see me like,
oh, how funny. Couch. Literally just after we started, I knew there was a delivery coming and I wrote a little note on the front door saying, please don't knock, I'm in a live recording. Have a nice Christmas. Please leave it on the chair. Christmas. And I saw him just tiptoe up and put it on the chair.
Bless his heart.
Bless him. Thank you for reading the sign, mate.
Oh, now I want to know what you ordered. So what are your top tips for all the smart women in business across the world?
Top tips: find your peeps, find a person, and then, you know, build on it from there. One of the, I think the biggest things, obviously having the big community and the big groups, and finding a posse of people who've always got your back and have the sort of culture and the ethos that you want, whether that's go get them, or whether that's we'll get them tomorrow, or whether that's
go and lie on the couch and watch Netflix.
Do you know what I mean? Like whatever the vibe is, you know, we all need different things. Some people need much more gung-ho, like, come on, let's go do it. And some people are like, come on, I'll walk you with you, we'll hold hands on the way, whatever you need. Find those people. But also find like the person, like the biz bestie or a couple of biz besties who you can touch base with regularly, you can bounce ideas off with, ideally are at a similar kind of point in their business, but probably a slightly different sort of business to yours, partly because there's just different things like that are more relevant or more pertinent at different stages of business. And if you're, you know, meeting with someone who's way down the track that's more of a mentor rather than a biz buddy, it's a totally different relationship. I totally think you need mentors and coaches as well. But having someone who can understand a bit about your business, where you're at, and also call you on your bullshit, and that's the biggest thing, right? I have my biz bestie. We meet once a week. We have incredibly different businesses. There's absolutely no similarities between them, but we're at very similar stages of our business. We can talk through things like, I've got this idea, or I was thinking about this, or how would you troubleshoot this? And we can help each other with that. But we also know each other and know each other's business well enough to go, hey, doesn't sound like that priority you were talking about last month. Are we getting a bit derailed or distracted? You're right. Shiny object goes back in the toy box or whatever. So we can kind of call each other on the practical and the mindset BS that we do.
There's a whole lot. I can see you're hiding behind that product because it feels like you're showing up, and in fact you're actually not showing up.
Exactly. And I've got, you know, we've got a few biz besties around the place, and one we have a bit of a joke that with my shiny object, I'm like, I have to finish this, but I've got shiny object syndrome. So if you see me getting distracted by shiny objects, come get the spray bottle and give me a few squirts. So occasionally I'll just get a message from her with a GIF of someone with a spray bottle, because she can see that I've gone into a group and I'm like, hey, I was just having a think about this. She's like, stop, back to the thing you're supposed to be doing. Sorry, yes, thank you. That's really important to me, like just having those people who I trust, have got my back, and know what they're talking about, can give great advice, but also keep me on the straight and narrow and be my cheerleaders and all of that sort of thing. I think that, you know, the people side of things is what makes or breaks, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, fortunately, but unfortunately it can be a really quick fix that people don't lean on, sort of thing. So I think that, you know, getting your circle right is really, really important. Secondly, I think having some of those routines and rituals and structures in your business are not negotiable. I always talk about freedom in structure. When you're sort of rolling around and, you know, there's no substance or there's no structure at all, sometimes it works, especially with people with super creative businesses and that sort of thing. That's fantastic, and if it's working, go nuts. But often people don't have any structure, and then they get this amazing inspiration or motivation or creative burst or whatever, but there's no conduit to get it to where it needs to be to make it what you want it to be, sort of thing, whether
actually
that's
make it sell
product or exactly, or, you know, you've got, I want to write this blog or I want to do this video, and then you do it, but then you're not sure how to actually distribute it or publish it and that sort of thing. So it just sits there. Like, it's kind of having some sort of structures and that sort of thing actually make it easier for things to be brought to life when you do get that, whatever it is. So I think that's really important. And what else? Yeah, I think the rituals is really big. So having the beginning of the day, beginning of the month, end of the day, whatever it is, those sort of things that are constant and what's the word I'm looking for? you're expecting them. You know what's going on
Predictable.
because they're predictable. Thank you. I'm like, expectable? That's not quite a word. But yes, exactly what you were saying. Predictable, because there's so many other things that do fluctuate and do change and do require you to be very agile and flexible, that if there's a few things that are those kind of, I could depend on these happen all the time, I can always go back to that, it just makes it a lot less turbulent sort of thing, or balances
and
out.
Is it like your amygdala goes safety, comfort?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. Yep. I know what to expect. I know what's coming next. And probably the last thing is rewards and celebrations and stopping to reflect. Like, I didn't do that for the first few years. I was like, I've got a to-do list. Done. What's next? Done. What's next? Done. What's next? And then it wasn't until, years down the track, you're like, shit, I've got a lot of stuff done.
I've done a lot of
great achievements. Yeah. And then people talk about, well, how are you going to reward yourself when you sell out your retreat? I was like, run the retreat? I don't know. And I guess you sort of learn these things by osmosis. And then there was this beautiful mala necklace that I was coveting, but it was quite expensive. And I was like, oh no. I was like, right, if I sell out my retreat, I'll buy that. And I sold it out and I bought it. And I wore that thing almost every single day with such pride. Yeah.
This was secured my first 5-figure contract mala necklace.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a few years ago now.
It's so cool. Yeah, it's so, and it is such a beautiful anchor that you can wear, and you're like, I remember I did this thing, when I blah, 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 whatever it is. And whether it's just taking a moment to message your biz bestie, guess what I just did, having that moment to stop. And the very first course that I ever put together was called Pause for Effect, and it was about pausing to review and reflect at the end of the year before you start planning for a new year, because there's no point planning the future if you don't know what happened in the past, right? There's no point. Yeah. And there's often times where we plan stuff and we just plan to do the same shit again, and it actually didn't work the first time. Like, why are we doing that thing again? Don't we need to maybe make some changes? So I did this whole thing. So I think it's a really big thing to actually take the moment to reflect and reward yourself and celebrate the wins, whatever that looks like, little and big. Even if it's just like, I did that, get up and go for a walk, go and check your letterbox and get some fresh air, I don't know, whatever your reward is, go make another cup of coffee.
That's my all right, I finished my calls today, I'm going to walk to my mailbox. Which is quite a hike.
Epic.
Woo!
Yeah. Woo! Amazing. But yeah, having
when we're in lockdown, dude, I'm like, going to my mailbox is a good kind of...
This is an outing. I might put on my ball gown for it too.
I won that ring doing my vacuuming in my ball gown, but that's another story.
I love it. It's awesome.
Oh,
yeah, I think that's a really big thing. It's one that a lot of us miss, and we even like I do a fair bit of it, and I still think I could probably do more of it. Yeah.
I could definitely do more of it. Now I'm like, I'm just about to finish some projects, looking ahead to next year. Oh, we need some celebration time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. How can people connect with you? Speaking of magnetic women, find out more about you and your work.
Website is just claireriley.co, or Facebook Claire Riley Coaching. You can find me there. They're probably the best places. There's always loads of content. Surprise. I've got a podcast as well. Yeah, the podcast is The Recovering Perfectionist, which is on all the usual podcasty places. So that's a good place to start if you want to hang out there.
Amazing. Yay. Thank you, Claire, for your time today and your insights.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was great to chat.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Claire.
Great.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Women in Business podcast. If you'd like access to the show notes, please visit my website, janemackaycommunications.com.au/blog. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more, please don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, keep on being a smart woman in business.